Hello, welcome back. Do excuse my voice. In the last couple of weeks, I have had the flu, um, and a cough that seems like it was never going to go away. Um, and now it has. So, today I wanted to talk to you about a deck that I got in that is really cool. It's the Fantasy Showcase Tarot. This was edited, edited by a man named Bruce Pelz, Pelz, I believe. Yeah. The deck came out in 1980. He started collecting and editing the art and formatting the cards and everything in 1969. So the deck took 11 years to create. As far as I can tell, the deck was put out by Bruce Pelz and was never a mass market deck. So I guess this was like a very early indie deck, like very early, 1980. There's also no information about like which edition this particular one is, so I don't know that it ever was printed more than in 1980. Like, he may have just done one big printing of it and then that was it. Another interesting thing to notice about the box is that it looked really familiar to me when I first saw it. I was like, it looks like it just looked familiar. And I think it looks familiar because it was printed by Morgan Press in New York, who is the same publisher of the Aquarian Tarot, and all of the Aquarian Tarot boxes are exactly like this. They're black, they have tarot on the bottom. The font is all exactly the same. Let me see if I can... it's kind of shiny, but you can kind of see. The font is all the same, everything is the same. So, yeah, that's interesting. So, the cool thing about this is there are 85 different artists that each made a card. And obviously that means that there are extra cards. And I'll get into that after I tell you about how he decided to do this in the first place. So, he was really into fantasy and sci-fi art. And most of the information I actually got from the Little White Book. The Little White Book was very informative about his creative process, why he did it, all of that kind of stuff. So, forgive me, I'm going to look at my notes because I want to make sure that I give everyone the right information. And to be totally honest, I have the worst memory on the planet. So, he says that basically between the 30s, excuse me, and the 50s, fantasy and sci-fi artists only really had two venues to showcase their work or, get their work published. So professional artists got, they were featured on the covers of magazines and on like paperback books, and they were published that way. And then the amateur artists, or amateur is not a really fun, nice word, I think. Let's go non-professional. The non-professional artists, they basically were published in like fanzines, like little small publications that were put out by fans of sci-fi pop culture, like Star Wars, that kind of thing. So like fan fiction, essentially, that's how they were able to be published. So Bruce writes that he noticed that often lots of the non-professional artists and the fan fiction art that was being put out and published was better than a lot of the professional artists. And he says he didn't know whether it was attributed to like a means kind of thing, like the amateur artist or the non-professional artists didn't have the means to get their art seen by the right people, and so that's why they didn't get published in that way. And then in 1960, the World Science Fiction Convention added an art show component, and the art show component was open to anyone. So there were professional artists, there were non-professional artists, there were people who just like to doodle at their house. Anyone could submit art to the art show. And it was very popular. People that went to the convention really loved it. He says that almost every artist that submitted art for the art show that wanted to sell their art sold all of their art. So basically anything that was there was sold. There was nothing left over at the end. And I thought that was really cool too, because I mean, I feel like as, if I were an artist who was not working professionally but maybe wanted to, it would just be so exciting to have your art showcased on such a large scale like that, and then to have someone love it and buy it. I feel like that would be such a cool experience. So basically within 3 years of that convention introducing this art show, all of the other science fiction conventions across the country started incorporating their own art shows also. So it became a thing. So he writes that the tarot deck is a result of those art shows and the lack of availability of Steubenware on the West Coast. So I had to Google what Steubenware was because I've never heard of it. So apparently Steubenware, from the research that I've done, they were like the equivalent of Fostoria crystal or Waterford crystal. They were a company who specialized in crystal serving pieces and drinkware, and they had a more economical line of cut glass platters and drinkware goblets, that kind of thing. So you're probably thinking, what the hell does that have to do with any of the rest of this? So Bruce had a friend named Don Simpson, and Don was an artist, and he specialized in engraving glass and crystal. And Don convinced him to get a Steubenware goblet, like a water goblet, which was very expensive. And just to backtrack a little bit, Steubenware now, when I Googled it and searched it, their glassware and platters and things sell for thousands of dollars. I don't think it's produced anymore, and apparently is a very highly sought after and collectible thing. So Don convinced him to buy this goblet, and he promised that he would engrave it with whatever he wanted. He would draw whatever he wanted on it. And it took Bruce 5 years to decide what he wanted on it. And basically he decided that he wanted the Tower card etched into his water goblet, and he wanted 21 other goblets to go with it, and he wanted all of the major arcana drawn on these goblets. Well, by the time he decided to do that, and he wanted that, the goblets, or the company as a whole, was only selling their products and stuff in New York City. And he was all the way on the West Coast. So that was a problem. But I will say, since his tarot deck was printed in New York, in New York City. I don't know. Seems like if he really wanted to, he could have gotten to New York to get these glasses. But at any rate, it is what it is. I'm glad he didn't, because now we have a tarot deck. So when he realized that the glasses weren't readily available where he was anymore, he decided to basically go to this convention, the science fiction convention, go to the art show, pick 22 artists that he liked the best, and ask them to each create a card for a Mages Only tarot deck. And then once he did that, and he had the 22, actually he has 24 majors, because he added 2. We'll get to that. Once he decided to do that, and he had them all, he decided just to go ahead and expand and just do the full deck. So, alright, let me tell you about the extra cards. So, there's one called Separation, because he said that he felt like that was missing because like lots of people think of the major arcana as like the fool's journey through life and like all of life's ups and downs, and he felt like separation, the feeling of separation, was missing out of the major arcana. And he describes it as like a loss of a person, like a loved one, a divorce, something like that. He felt like that component of life was missing. The other one was called the Farrier. Okay, so he says, the Farrier is a logical extension of the force flow of the major arcana, which ordinarily stops with the world, not taking into consideration the fact that the world is no longer an appropriate final boundary. So I think he was looking at it kind of like a science fiction, or like, you know, immediately what I'm thinking right now is like To Infinity and Beyond. Sorry, Toy Story, everybody should love it, it's fun. Or maybe he's considering like the afterlife. At any rate, even though he's not there wasn't really any information about him and why he likes tarot or what, you know, anything like that. But I do like that the extra cards that he added were thoughtful, and you know, if you go by his logic, they do make sense. So that was the first 2, and then he added another 4 more. So he says that the court cards were missing a component as well. So he says that this is just what he says. I understand that this is not going to be the thought process of many of us, and I didn't really think of it like this either, but again, the way he describes it is kind of thoughtful, and I like it, and it fits with the times because it's empowering, in my opinion. So, yep. The court cards are, he says that the page is traditionally thought of as being a young person that could be a man, you know, boy or girl, doesn't matter. The knight, he says, is typically thought of as being a young man or more masculine. And then there's the queen, obviously, who is representative of like an older woman. And then the king, who is obviously more mature, older man. And so he says that there wasn't enough feminine energy in the knight. And so he added a lady. So the court cards for this deck are page, knight, lady, queen, king. And the knight and the lady are meant to be equal. They're meant to be, like, if you laid them out, they would be side by side. They're not, it isn't one is higher or above the other. Lady does come after knight, just in, you know, the description and everything, but I think it was just purely because you had to pick one. So lady is meant to be like the feminine energy of the knight. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm going to flip the camera and we will do a whole little walkthrough and let you see all of the cards. Normally, this is not, like, science fiction is not my thing. I'm not really big into Star Wars or, like, any of that kind of stuff. But I saw a few of the cards, and I just, like, really fell in love. And the deck is really, really cool. And you don't see a lot of decks that are, a combination of this many artists all, like, working on one project and putting it all together. Because that's a lot of people to organize, get together, get all of their stuff compiled, edited, put together, formatted correctly. And honestly, I can't think of many. I don't think that there are many decks that have done that. I'm immediately off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the Collective Tarot. Obviously, I know I'm missing a couple. There are definitely other decks. I'm not saying that this and the Collective are the only ones. That's just the only ones I think of right off the bat. So yeah, I'll go ahead and flip the camera. We'll do a little walkthrough and let you see why this deck is super cool. Okay, so here we have the box. It's a really nice two-piece box. There is the side, the top, the other side, the bottom, and here is the back with all of the information. Alright, so these are the backs, and as you can see, this is a standard tarot card, so they are slightly slimmer and slightly shorter than a standard tarot. But, yeah. They're a good size, really. And then here is the little white book. So here's all the information about the deck that I already told you. And then it goes through all of the suits, and it tells you exactly who is the artist, the meaning and the reversed meaning, which are all, like, pretty standard RWS, like the same little. They're very similar to the little white book in the US Games RWS yellow box. Alright, so here we have the Fool, the Magician, High Priestess, Empress, Emperor, and see, some of them are way more sci-fi and fantasy than others. I love this strength card. She's just, like, petting the lion, like she's not making the lion do anything. This has got to be one of my favorite hermit cards. It just looks so, like, it embodies everything about the hermit, like, wise, knowledgeable. He's kind of, like, looking down on these other, this, like, little valley. His little cloak is beautiful. Just really cool. Okay, not my favorite Justice, but, this Hanged Man is really cool. This Death, also pretty cool. Temperance, very kind of abstract. There's our Devil. This tower is really cool. This kind of reminds me of, obviously that's not what it is, but it looks like a squid to me. And I think that's pretty cool. Alright, and then we have the star. The moon. I really like the moon because it's like the moon is looking down over this maze. The sun. This is a beautiful sun card. Like two kids. It almost looks like they found the sun. I mean, obviously the sun's back here, but they're kind of like holding this little like glowing seashell type thing. Judgment. This world card is pretty cool. And then here are the extra cards. Here is separation. And you kind of get this like sense of divorce. Like they've got this sword like kind of like separating the two of them. And then the farrier. Alright, and then here we go with the wands. There's the ace. The 2. The 3. Very like sci-fi. The 4, I really like this 4. So for me, even though this is not like you don't immediately see the 4 wands, which are here, 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 and I kind of like overlooked this one. At first when I saw it, I was like, that's not like what's going on. But to me, this looks like a woman in a wedding dress, and this looks like maybe it's her maid of honor or something like that. So for me, this still has the whole feeling of the traditional 4 of wands from the RWS, even though it's not really like 2 people or a huge party. And then here's a 5, which again, like the art is so variable in this deck. Like, I mean, look at this. This does not look like it goes in the same deck, but for some reason, I think it's really cool. This is a cool 8. They're kind of like flying in space. A 9. Beautiful card. The colors are beautiful. And again, here's a 10. Kind of looking a little more like cartoony. And then the page. The knight. The lady, which is like the feminine energy. Even though to me these kind of both are feminine, which is interesting because his whole explanation for the lady is that the knight is usually really masculine. But to me this looks feminine. Queen. And the king. And then we go into the pentacles. We have the ace. The 2. Such a fun little, I don't even know what he is. Very traditional RWS though. We've got the boats in the back. 3. Kind of looks like little aliens in the RWS. The 4, we have this like little rat, looks like he's up to no good. The 5 of Pentacles is really interesting. I'm interested to hear, I don't know if Simon from the Hermit's Cave will watch this, but I'm interested to see what he thinks of this because this is one of his favorite cards, and this does not look very traditional to me at all. But I like it, it's cool. 6. The 7. This is a really pretty card too. The 8. Looks really traditional. I mean, obviously, in the regular RWS, these are like going up a tree or a pole or something, but really cool. This is a gorgeous card, but this is one of the cards that I found slightly problematic because this is the 9 of Pentacles, and it doesn't look like the 9 of Pentacles to me at all, and there's not 9 Pentacles on it. And it doesn't say 9, so I don't know. When I read with this deck, if I pull this card, I probably will get tripped up a little at first. Then there's the 10, which is interesting. It's like a different perspective, but it's kind of the same. Like, this kind of reminds me of in the traditional one, except if you were looking at that scene from the opposite. Like, normally there would be, someone here, a little dog, and then they would be looking, like, it seems like they would be looking this way, like towards us, and we're looking at them, basically. So that's cool. So, page, knight, oh, and lady. Okay, this time it really makes sense to me because this does look really masculine. This one obviously is very feminine. So these are representative of the same card, but obviously masculine and feminine. Then the queen and the king. And now we go into the swords. This is really heavily sci-fi. Looks like it could be like the album cover of like Guns N' Roses or something. Like Metallica. Yeah, that looks like it would make a good Metallica album. And there's our 2, kind of looking like stained glass. Almost looks like Tarot of the Cloisters. The 3, I really love this. The way that they've like, the whole design of this is really cool. The font, all of it. The 4, again, not totally my favorite because immediately upon looking at it, you don't really tell, you can't tell that it's 4 necessarily. The 4th one is down here, but otherwise it looks like, if you just glance at it, it looks like 3. And there's the 5, like really moody. The 6, excuse me, love this art. The colors are so cool. And it's fun that we're, again, looking at it from a different point of view. Like, normally you would be looking at the back of him, and instead we're, like, in the ocean already looking at him. These kind of, obviously they're not formatted the way that Marseille is, but the way that they curve like this reminds me of Marseille. It's kind of cool. This would make a cool tattoo. Alright, and then we have the page, the knight, and the lady. Oh, that's fun. She's on like a butterfly horse. The queen and the king. And now we're on to the cups. And this reminds me of David Palladini's art. That's not, excuse me, that's not who it is, but that's what this looks like to me. Yeah, so there's our little 2. This 3 is so cool. Love the colors. The 4, very interesting. Kind of like acid trip, little blob, handing him a cup. The 5, this is cool. I like that they made it a woman because traditionally it looks like a man to me. I mean, it's obviously just the back of the person, so it could be a woman, but this I like this feminine energy. And then the 6, fun little lizard having a ball. The 7, I kind of like this. At first I didn't, but I kind of like this because you can see the stress in this person's face thinking about all the choices. And I think that's a fun aspect of the card to, play with sometimes and think about, is like, even though you have all these choices, it can be stressful. Again, not necessarily my favorite, like little Kermit in a spacesuit, and there's not really much information to tell you that it's 9. I mean, this number 9 kind of jumps out at me, but this is fun. It's like he's dreaming of the RWS card. That's cool. Happy dreams. We have the page, the knight, and the lady. But the lady to me looks kind of regal, like she could be the queen. And then the queen and the king, which is pretty cool. So that is the Fantasy Showcase Tarot. My copy, I got lucky and found one that was fully sealed. I mean, obviously I took that off before I started filming because that can be a little cumbersome, but you can definitely find it. Certainly it's available. I hope you enjoyed that. Really cool, a little weird, kind of indie, really, because I don't think it was mass produced. I'm going to call it the first indie deck, even though that's probably bullshit, but, whatever. All right, thanks for watching.